Hello, today I will be presenting on the impact of Ukrainian refugee crisis on Poland. After Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, millions of Ukrainians were forced to flee their homes. Because Poland shared a direct border with Ukraine, it became the main country receiving refugees. And this crisis is important not only for Poland, but also for Europe and international relations because it involves security, migration, humanitarian laws, and geopolitical power. Let's look at the brief background. To understand the impact, we first need to understand Poland. Geographically, as you can see on the map, Poland is located in Central Europe and borders with Ukraine and countries like Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Lithuania, Belarus, and of course Ukraine. Uh, and this made it the first safe destinations for many Ukrainians escaping the war. And for example, families could cross the borders by car or train within hours, and making Poland the most accessible options. In terms of their politics, Poland is parliamentary democratic republic and a member of the European Union and NATO. As the head of the state is Karol Nawrocki, is currently the president of Poland since August 6, 2025. And in terms of the head of government, was led by Donald Tusk on December 13, 2023. This matters because EU membership allows Poland to receive financial support and NATO membership, increasing its role in regional security. In terms of their economy, Poland is a high-income country with strong industries like manufacturers and agriculture. And before the war, many Ukrainians were already working in Poland as seasonal workers. For example, Ukrainian workers were common in constructions and farming, and this existing relationship made integration somewhat easier. So they also have one of the fastest growing economies in Central Europe, the upper middle class to their high GDP per capita, and a key destinations for labor migration. What is the issue? In 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine as cities were bombed and infrastructures were destroyed. Millions of civilians fled, and women and children made up the majority of the refugees because men were required to stay and fight. Poland quickly became their main host countries, and within weeks, millions crossed the border, and this became the largest refugee movement in Europe since World War II. And for example, train stations in Polish cities like Warsaw were filled with volunteers offering food, blankets, and transportation. The speed and scale of the movements were unprecedented. Why is this important? This crisis is important for three major reasons. First was pressure on public services. Around 3.5 million refugees entered Poland in just 2 months, and imagine a city suddenly increased in its population overnight. And schools became overcrowded, hospitals had longer waiting times, housing became scarce, especially in major cities. And second, you got economic impact. On one hand, refugees helped fill labor shortages, and for example, Ukrainian women found jobs in retail, healthcare, and hospitality. On the other hand, there were tensions in agriculture when Ukrainian grains export affected Polish farmers' income. And third, because security concerns, Poland is close to conflicts, so there were fears that the war could expand, and this increased defense awareness and public concerns about Russian aggression. To understand the crisis clearly, we need to define some key terms. First, refugee. A refugee is someone who crosses international borders to escape war or persecution. Ukrainian civilians who entered Poland are considered refugees under international law. A host country is a country that receives refugee. In this case, Poland became the main host country in this crisis. Temporary protection is a special legal status activated by the European Union. Instead of making refugees wait years for asylum's approval, this policy immediately allows Ukrainians to stay, work, access healthcare, and education. It is also important to differentiate refugee from internally displaced person, or IDP as for short, and remains inside their own country. Ukrainian refugees cross into Poland, which made this an international issue rather than just a domestic Ukrainian problem. What is the impact of the issue on the country? One major impact was the strain in public institution. Housing shortages became serious, especially in cities like Krakow and Warsaw. Rent prices increased due to higher demand, and schools faced overcrowding. For example, some classes had to add extra desks and create afternoon shifts to accommodate Ukrainian children. Healthcare system also experienced longer waiting times. Refugees required medical services, vaccinations, and mental health supports due to trauma from war. And these pressures required rapid government adjustments and increasing spending. And second, demographic and labor market transformation and challenges. This crisis also reshaped Poland's populations and labor market. And before 2022, many Ukrainians were temporary workers, and after the invasion, many settled more permanently. For example, Ukrainian women and children enrolled their children in Polish schools, found employment, and began integrating into society. And this helped Poland address labor shortages in certain sectors like elderly care and services. However, it also created long-term integration challenges, such as a language barrier and recognition of professional qualification. For instance, like your Ukrainian doctors, for example, may need qualification before practicing in Poland. What is being done at the state level to address the issue? As the state level, Poland passed a special law granting temporary protection to Ukraine, and this law allowed them to legally work and access healthcare and education immediately. The government also provided financial support to Polish families hosting refugees. For example, families who opened their home received compensation for that. Um, and language programs were expanded into schools to help Ukrainian children adapt. Local governments and NGO cooperated to provide shelters and humanitarian aid, and this shows how both states, institutions, and civil society played a role. What is the impact of the issue upon the world? We got number one, we have European migration policy. And this crisis changed European migration policy. And just within 4 weeks, 2.6 million Ukrainians entered Poland, unlike previous refugee crises such as the Syrian crisis in 2015. The EU responded more quickly this time and collectively by activating the Temporary Protection Directive. And this demonstrates strong unity and a faster policy coordination across European countries. Second is global impact regional security. The crisis also strengthened Poland's role in global security. As NATO members, Poland became a key country in NATO's eastern flank, and NATO increased troop presence in the region to deter further Russian aggression. Poland also became a logistic hub for Western military aid sent to Ukraine. Additionally, Poland accelerated efforts to reduce energy dependence on Russia. For example, it invested more in alternative gas and supplies and infrastructure. What is being done at the system level to address the issue? At the international level, multiple actors responded. The European Union provided financial assistance to help Poland manage refugee programs. NATO strengthened border security and regional defense coordination. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNCR for short, provided shelter, legal protection, and support services. European countries also shoulder responsibility by accepting refugees and contributing funding. This demonstrated multilateral cooperation in international relations. In conclusions, to look at my predictions and prescriptions, and also my recommendation. So, if the war continues, Poland will likely continue integrating Ukrainian refugees long term, and this may permanently change Poland's workforce and demographic structure. My recommendation is that Poland should expand integration programs, especially language education, and professional qualification programs. At the same time, Poland should continue working closely with the European Union to secure financial and social support to prevent long-term economic strain. In this case, it is also important for international relations because it highlights the balance between state sovereignty, humanitarian responsibility, and a regional security. And these are my references, where all my studies are found. Thank you for listening.